Okay. You're on, Mr. Chairman.
We'll call this meeting of the Arundel Planning Board to order, today being January 28, 2016, at 7:02 PM. And I'll ask for a roll call.
Martin Kane.
James Lowry.
Tom McKinnon.
Rich Canong.
John McKinnon.
Tad Redwood.
Okay, we have on the agenda tonight an approval of the agenda. Approval, no minutes to approve.
Still.
Still, we have a public hearing for Ledgewood Meadows subdivision. It's a major subdivision application. This is the final review. We will then go into pending applications. Item 1 is Ledgewood Meadows subdivision, the final review. Item 2 is Brookside Estates, a reading of the findings of fact for the preliminary subdivision approval at the December 10th, 2015 meeting. Item 3 is Bentley's Campground Conditional Use Pre-Application Sketch Plan. And we have new applications. Under new applications, we have the Cape Arundel Cottage Resort, a revision of an approved subdivision and conditional use permit. We will then have some discussion on land use and subdivision ordinance revisions with a proposal to introduce fire protection. We have the planner's report, and then we're all going to get to go home.
And that's all going to be done by 9 o'clock, right?
We're going to try.
Yeah.
Okay? Does anybody have anything they want to add to the agenda? Or any revisions that you see on the agenda that need to be made? I do have one. It's item number 2 under the pending applications, and when we get there, we'll have some discussion on that item.
Okay, well, I move to approve the agenda.
Yeah.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve the agenda. All those in favor? Okay.
Unanimous.
First up, it is unanimous. First up, Ledgewood Meadows subdivision, a major subdivision application, final review, proposed development of a 2-lot commercial subdivision and a 4-lot cluster subdivision on 20.76 acres located at 14 Ledgecliff Drive, tax map 4, lots 24 and 25B in the CCNAR district and the R4 zones. Phil Labby is the applicant and Paul Gadboy, PE, is the owner's agent. Paul?
Thank you.
The public hearing.
This is the public hearing portion.
My name is Paul Gavos. I did the engineering and surveying for Phil Ladry on this particular project. Phil is here this evening for any questions that he might want to answer. The applicant owns about approximately 21 acres, proposing to construct a 1,500-foot long road in order to provide access to 6 lots. The 2 front lots will be commercial, and the 4 back lots will be residential purposes. The project was derived under the cluster subdivision ordinance, so the minimum lot size was reduced, or the area, the open space was created to reserve the additional area required for the lot. So the lots are smaller walking size, but maintaining an open space around the entire project in order to preserve wetlands and buffers between the property lines. The lots are serviced by on-lot septic and public water. The project proposed to construct a fire pond and 2 stormwater management ponds in order to control runoff from the site. And if there's any other questions, I'll provide the answer.
Anybody in the public have any questions? Yes, sir. State your name, please.
My name is Richard Lessard, I'm in the butter. My questions are, yes. Did you say city water?
No, on-lot septic, on-lot water, yes.
You did say.
He was hoping.
The zoning that was just recently passed, how did that zoning affect this?
This project received preliminary plan approval prior to the zoning being changed, so it was grandfathered under the old zoning requirements. So we came forward, or we were having this reviewed under the old requirements, not the new requirements.
So the commercial lots are
Under the old ones, I believe the commercial lots were still allowed. I can't remember what the zone line was. Now the zone line's been changed. I think the entire site's commercial. I haven't really looked at the new zone line because it didn't really affect this project. These are the old zone.
My other question is the ledge. Do you plan on doing?
All right, ledge, you know, there's gonna be certainly a ledge cut right through here, right next to your property, obviously. The question, Mike, is the re-blasting required for that? And of course, the requirements are for blasting surveys to be completed prior to any of that being taking place. So certainly, I think they'll be notifying you, coming onto your property, asking you, you know, videotape your foundations to make sure there's no current issues. So actually, when the project's completed, they can go ahead and if you had a complaint, they can see if that was a legitimate complaint. So that would be taking place prior to building in blasting the project. It is a open ledge, it's not trench blasting. Trench blasting is more, has more impact, because if you're trying to go down and you're charging and you're actually shaking the land. So if the ledge is above ground, they can actually blast that and break that off without doing a whole lot of, I guess, damage to the body home, technically.
Hamburg.
Hammering, right. So, I don't know if that answers your question.
I just had a thought coming up, and I did, as a question, part of public hearing, and it's not too subject to the revision of the sketch plan or anything else, but if Route 111 ever did get public water along Route 1, I mentioned to Mr. Labby that if a fire hydrant could be possibly installed along that site there.
If public water comes on Alfred Road, if
Yes.
Bill would install a fire hydrant adjacent to the proposed drive, is that what you're asking?
Yes. I mean, it is a thought for future, not subject to any changes, which has already been drawn and put up.
I don't even know how to answer that question. I think Phil is.
Ask Mr. Phil.
Okay, Phil, go ahead.
If public water ever comes up 111 in my lifetime, I would love to put a hydrant out there.
Good answer.
That's why I just mentioned it, I mean, so it's for that, and I mentioned it to Phil before the meeting, so I didn't blindside him.
Okay.
That's why I had that question brought up that way.
Are there any other members of the public that have comments or questions for either Mr. Labby or for Phil? On either side? Yes, ma'am.
Debbie Harris, we are near Riverside's. I showed him earlier, we're over that way.
Yeah, there's a
We've
strip
never
of
been
land
one of
here.
these, and we don't know the impact of what it's gonna do that far out, as far as noise, traffic, and everything else that goes with that.
Well, you'll have 4 residential homes back up in, I guess is it your house that's back in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, there must be back in this area.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Other than having a residential neighborhood just off to your east, I'm not sure what kind of an impact it would have. It would just be like having regular neighbors.
But is the blasting gonna reach that far out over to us too?
Well, they're probably, I don't know what the blasting radius is for actually looking at homes, but they may be contacting you to actually videotape your house if you're within, is it 500 feet or 1,000 feet? I'm not sure what it is.
2,500 usually.
No, it's 500 feet radius of the blast area
Right,
Okay.
has to be
no
videoed
Videotape.
and pre-blast surveyed. That's every job we do that has ledge, that's a requirement.
You remember we went out to 2,500 with the seasonal cottages. I think that was a safety margin.
Yeah, they had a lot of blasting to do.
They did.
Just, any other questions from the public? Okay, hearing none, I'll call the public hearing to a close at 7:11. Next item on the agenda, pending applications for Ledgewood Meadows subdivision. Going to save everybody the trouble of having to hear me repeat what I just said the first time around. We have the cost estimates that were presented.
Which was part of the submission requirements.
which is part of it, correct. I believe this was the only other item that we needed to have, correct?
I just have a couple questions about it, so.
Okay.
Phil, did you do them or did Alden?
I did those.
Okay, because my only question was, you only showed one survey marker on your estimate that was, that you had, that you're gonna provide, and the whole road and all the lots have gotta be pinned before any building
The
permits.
survey markers for the lot, for the land
Yeah,
are presently in,
right,
and Paul will do the road markers, and he will be surveying the lots.
okay, for $500.
Well, I guess we'll have to work that out.
That was my question, Phil.
Yeah.
I thought that unit price was, the unit price looked good for a pin, and it was real good for a pin.
Good for one,
For one.
that race is well for one.
That works for you. For Phil, the whole unit price, the whole thing is, it just seemed a little low on that. We usually charge per pin.
Well, it's monuments in the roads, and
Monuments,
the
yeah,
harder,
sorry.
you know, pins really aren't that huge amount of deal, you know, $50, $100 per pin.
Yeah,
Then we have like Traverse already out there, Station's already out there.
right,
Monuments are usually $50 per monument.
yeah. And then there's about,
Yeah.
every point of intersection, point of curvature is
Quite a few. Well, I mean, you know,
Well, you're gonna have enough ledge? Come on.
well, no, we're talking about sagging.
Yeah. Covered up, yeah.
And these cost estimates, we had a discussion last time, these
Right.
cost estimates are internal to Labby Construction, or are
They're internal.
they internal?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
That's a reduced rate.
Yeah, if you can get a 1,500-foot road for $187,000, that's a great deal. So that includes your price, that's your pricing.
That's pricing if I was doing a job for you.
Yeah. So,
Oh, so that's regular
increased it.
retail pricing?
yeah.
That's regular
Yeah, he
retail
increased
price
that,
that
I'm
you're
sorry.
looking at right now.
Okay.
I didn't make that clear, I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, he increased that amount from what he was talking about before.
The amount that I gave to Tad before the last meeting was what would have been my cost to do the project, and apparently that was not acceptable. So these are retail numbers.
Have you reached any kind of financing, tri-party or anything like that?
No, we couldn't, I mean, that's gonna be up to the applicant, which is
Oh, yeah.
wants to use.
I just didn't
I
know
don't
if
see
you,
it's not posted until such time that the planning board gets the approval. Is the planning board all right with that number for the monuments, or? I think they're about 15 out there, it looks like.
over the monuments,
Yeah.
so 15 times 50.
50, close.
yeah, it's only a couple $100 off, I'm not.
Okay. So,
Through the chair.
Any, yes, Marty?
You did, and I think Mr. Levy said he was gonna have did he have to have the condo?
he has to, yeah, he had the covenants, yeah.
Right, I
The
saw
covenants
that.
are all done, the easement's done, easement will have to be executed and conveyed to the town for fire pond,
Yeah.
after the approval.
Yeah, well, I was
It's
just saying,
number of
because that
days to do
was
that.
part of our discussion.
Right.
At that time of the last meeting, we had the condo documents done, I think.
It's homeowners.
Homeowners or whatever, yeah.
I
But
did,
they've
I
been-
did see those.
Yeah, they were handed out.
Yeah.
they were-
Yes.
I'm not sure when, but I did see them. I saw them
I think
earlier
I-
today.
I think I emailed them to everybody, I mean, that's.
That could
No,
be.
not everybody.
Well, if you don't have an email, Marty.
You said don't speak of everybody then.
Okay.
Fine line.
We delivered those documents to Tad before the last meeting.
Okay. I just remember it was part of, I thought it was part of the discussion, that's why. Because your comment was, how soon do you need it?
We had reviewed that for the last meeting, they were fine at the last, so nothing
Just
changed.
to answer the question.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I would ask that we recirculate the list of attendees because we have. quite a few
Yes.
people who came in, so
And it,
if you would mention that.
We are going to be circulating around a list of attendees. If you are here and have not already signed it, please do so that we know who's here. Is there anything else that anyone on the board has for either? No?
Just put on.
Okay. We need a findings of fact. Not, here we go. Okay. Arundel Planning Board, findings of fact and approval motion for Ledgewood Meadows subdivision, January 28, 2016. Whereas on May 28, 2015, the Arundel Planning Board received a preliminary major subdivision application from Phil Labby for the proposed development of a 2-lot commercial subdivision and a 4-lot cluster residential subdivision on 20.76 acres called Ledgewood Meadows and located at 14 Ledgecliff Drive, tax map 4, lots 24 and 25B in the CCN and the R4 districts. On June 10, 2015, the two zoning districts were merged into the Alfred Road Business District at the Arundel Town Meeting. Whereas the Arundel Planning Board determined that the applicants had submitted their applications and had undergone substantive review sufficiently to be regulated under the zoning provisions of the CCS and the R4 districts. Whereas on June 11, 2000...
That should be CCN.
Yeah,
Yes, it should be. Thank you.
Good catch.
Whereas on June 11, 2015, the planning board conducted a site walk of the proposed subdivision site. Whereas the applicant modified the preliminary major subdivision plan and resubmitted to the board. Whereas on December 10, 2015, the planning board granted the applicant a preliminary subdivision plan approval, subject to the provision of homeowners association declarations and documents, easements granted to the town of Arundel for access and maintenance rights to the proposed fire pond, and revised cost estimates. Whereas on January 14, 2016, the applicant submitted a complete final subdivision plan application to the planning board for consideration. Whereas on January 28, 2016, the planning board conducted a public hearing on the proposed project after making all required public and abutter notifications. Whereupon the Arundel Planning Board reviewed and gave due consideration of the applicant's amended application and has arrived at the following findings of fact. Number 1, the owner with right title and interest of tax map 4 lots 24 and 25B is Philip Labby. Number 2, the proposed development consists of a 2-lot commercial subdivision and a 4-lot cluster residential subdivision on 20.76 acres called Ledgewood Meadows and located at 14 Ledgecliff Drive, tax map 4, lots 24 and 25B in the AR district. Number 3, primary access shall be from Route 111 via a 1,400 linear foot extension of the existing Ledgecliff Drive. Number 4, the project is a cluster subdivision project with individual lot sizes ranging from 1 acre to 67,706 square feet. Number 5, a total of 12.35 acres of permanent open space shall be created by the subdivision with the open space conveyed to the project homeowners association. Number 6, the subdivision will be serviced by on-site wells and septic systems. We need the W for that. Either that or we're going to have L-trains running down through. Number 7, a 30,000-gallon fire pond located at station 10+10 will be fitted with a dry hydrant and easements provided to the town of Arundel for maintenance. Number 8, the applicant has submitted plans and engineering drawings for the proposed subdivision in the following documents. A hydrogeologic nitrate study prepared by R.W. Gillespie and dated October 2007. Final subdivision plan set for Ledgewood Meadows, prepared for Philip Labby, prepared by Paul Gadbois, P.E., dated 12/21, with revisions to 12/8/15 dated 9/26/2008, with revisions through to February 15th, 2010. The Maine Department of Transportation Traffic Movement Permit. Conformance with Article 9 performance standards. You're right, I'm sorry, it's Article 11. After due review and consideration, the Arundel Planning Board has determined the final subdivision plan application to be in conformance with the criteria of Section 11 of the Arundel subdivision ordinance as follows. 11.1 water pollution. The proposed project will not discharge runoff directly into any water body and provides a method of disposal and treatment that will not require a license or permit from the Maine DEP and meets the town water pollution standards.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the water pollution. All those in favor? Unanimous. 11.2 water supply. The proposed subdivision is not within 1,000 feet of a public water supply, and therefore individual wells and on-site septic systems will be installed for each residential and commercial lot. The applicant has demonstrated that the placement of on-site systems will meet state plumbing code standards. To provide adequate water supply, the applicant proposes to install a fire pond as depicted on the approved plan set with adequate capacity and dry hydrant fittings as approved by the Arundel Fire Chief.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve 11.2 water supply. Any discussion? All those in favor? It is unanimous. 11.3, impact on existing water supplies. The proposed project will not require and therefore will not impact established water supplies or suppliers. Well logs from the surrounding properties indicate adequate water supply for individual wells.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded for 11.3. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. 11.4, soil erosion control plan. The applicant has submitted a plan demonstrating adequate soil erosion control measures to protect downstream properties and expose slope during the construction process.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded for 11.4. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. 11.5, traffic conditions. Depending on the type of non-residential use that will be absorbed by the two commercial lots designated in proximity to Alfred Road, the trip generation anticipated of this project is anticipated to be less than 40 trips per day for the residential and 40 trips per day for the two non-residential lots. This will not result in a
Loss of service.
loss of service rating,
Level of service.
Level of service.
level of service rating for the
E rating. E rating.
E rating. Oh, that's
It's LOSE.
LOSE rating for the intersection of Ledge Cliff Road with Alfred Road during peak hours. Road geometry of the Alfred Road intersection meets the standards for a medium volume road as specified in section 77D of the land use ordinance. Since residential subdivisions are not permitted in the AR district, the planning board did not require the applicant to provide future road accesses to adjacent properties.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any
Discussion.
Marty?
Somewhere in the future, instead of short abbreviations, could that LOS be explained?
Spelled out, yes.
Right. Thank you. I have no idea what that was.
That's why I didn't either, so I mean, you can put your short version, but in parentheses what it means.
Okay.
It's.
Anything else?
Do I need to explain it? Because it's, actually, it's a standard in our subdivision ordinance that.
It is, I didn't recognize what level of service E rating. I was looking at that going,
I didn't have some details, so I'm just saying what it meant.
okay. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Yeah.
It's unanimous. 11.6, sewage disposal. Sewage disposal shall be accommodated by on-site septic systems. On-site soil tests show that all lots have adequate soils to support such systems.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded for 11.6. Any discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. 11.7, solid waste. The proposed project will not generate undue solid waste volumes that will tax the town's capacity to dispose of solid waste. The two commercial lots shall obtain contracts with waste disposal contractors and not contribute to the town waste stream.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve 11.7. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Motion's unanimous. 11.8. Oh, no, yes, 11.8. Impacts on scenic beauty, historic sites, and rare natural elements. The applicants have designated a large portion of the property for permanent open space that will be retained and maintained by the homeowners association. The limits or project forest land removal are delineated on the record plans.
That should be out, I think. Limits
The limits
of
of,
project forest land.
there are no archaeological, historical, or critical shoreline areas identified on the site, nor are any areas identified by the Maine Natural Heritage Program on the site.
Question.
Yes, Marty?
On site there, we do have a cemetery. Is that not classified as a,
I don't think it.
I'm just mentioning it.
I know, it's a good question.
It's a good question, but I don't think it
It's
falls
historical,
into.
It does. The historic resources are those that require some input and review by the Maine Historic Preservation Office of Maine Office of Historic Preservation, Maine Office of Historic Preservation. And it usually refers to any really significant historical resource. From a standpoint of it being a cemetery, the applicant has already provided
I realize that.
provided a buffer around it and will retain it, which is pretty much the standard procedure in dealing with cemeteries of that type. So it didn't require anything special, or it didn't, it wasn't, we never asked, the state whether or not they wanted to review it, quite frankly. We asked them whether or not there was any resources there, and they found no other resources, archaeological.
I was just thinking of cemetery as,
No, it's a good
Right,
point.
it is.
Well, it's a local historic site,
well,
not a
yeah,
state.
that's all I was inquiring.
A large ledge outcrop or cliff bisects the property. Although Ledge Cliff Drive will pierce this wall, the remainder of the cliffs and ledge outcrop will remain and be preserved as a natural feature to be enjoyed by the residents. The project is not located within 1,320 feet of any deer wintering yard identified by the Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. No portion of the project is within a resource protection district.
Move to approve.
Okay.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve 11.8. Any other discussion?
Just curious, where's the 1,320 come from?
Our subdivision ordinance, that is in section 11.8 of our subdivision ordinance. I have no idea what that magic number is, but it's a requirement that's written into our ordinance. It might be something we want to take a
Might want to look at that.
Subject to review.
Well, no, it's a law, and we just gotta determine why it's a law.
Right. Okay?
Quarter of a mile.
Yeah. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Yeah.
Motion's unanimous for 11.8. 11.9, conformance with the comprehensive plan. The project is in conformance with the 2014 comprehensive plan for the then CCN and R4 districts. Since the applicant's substantive submission and review, the CCN and R4 districts in this area have been combined into the AR district in conformance with the 2015 comprehensive plan revisions.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded for 11.9.
Jamie?
Any discussion?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor?
Yeah.
It's unanimous. 11.10, financial and technical ability. Given the applicant's vocation as an excavation and road building company, the applicant has demonstrated adequate technical capacity to complete the project in accordance with the approved plans. To ensure the project is constructed in accordance with the approved plan, the applicant shall provide the town with a performance surety in the amount of $187,500 and instrument approved by the town planner.
Now I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded for 11.10. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion's unanimous.
And I'll note that the number that's cited there, 187.5, is in excess of the estimate that was given to us.
If you wanna modify that, you can.
No, it's fine, if it's in excess.
It's a few extra dollars for mine.
11.11, impact on water quality or shoreline. The project is not located in the watershed of Brimstone Pond and therefore exempt from the standards of 11.11.
Move to approve.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded on 11.11. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion's unanimous. 11.12, impact upon groundwater quality. A groundwater and nitrate assessment was prepared by the F.R. Gillespie
RW.
by R.W.
No, FW.
F.W.
RW.
RW?
R.W. It was prepared by somebody.
You're right, it is RW. Wednesday.
Prepared by R.W. Gillespie and Company, indicating that the proposed project will not have a deleterious impact upon groundwater or potable water supplies on each of the subdivided lots.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded for 11.12. Any questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Yep.
Motion's unanimous. 11.13, floodplain management. The project is not located in any FEMA-identified 100-year floodplain.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded for 11.13. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Yep.
Motion carries unanimous. 11.14, freshwater wetlands. The applicant has identified all freshwater wetlands on the project site and has designated the project to have minimal impact upon these resources.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve 11.14. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Yep.
Motion's unanimous. 11.15, stormwater management. The applicant has presented a stormwater management plan complete with stormwater detention controls that achieve peak discharge for the rates for the 2, 5, 10, and 25-year frequency storms.
Move to approve.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded for 11.15. Any discussion? All those in favor? 11.16. We've already done 11.6. Reservation of open space, common lands, fire protection facilities, and private way. The applicant has provided homeowners covenants and documents that reserve designated open spaces as perpetually undeveloped and owned in common by all property owners in the project. Clearing of vegetation within the designated common open space shall be limited to the provision of walking trails and removal of hazard trees. Clearing for wildlife habitat enhancement shall require permits from the codes enforcement officer and the town planner. A road maintenance agreement has been submitted and approved and must be attached to each and every deed in the project, assigning equal fiscal responsibility for maintenance of road and stormwater infrastructure and common property. An easement description of the fire pond has been delivered to the planning board and shall be executed upon this approval, granting the town of Arundel full access rights to use and maintain the dry hydrant and fire pond infrastructure. Ledge Cliff Drive shall remain a private way owned and maintained by the homeowners association and shall not be maintained in any way by the town of Arundel.
Move to approve.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded for 11.16. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Motion carries. Conclusions of the planning board. Number 1, the criteria of Title 30A MRSA subsection 4404 have been met. Number 2, standards of the Arundel subdivision regulations have been met. Number 3, standards of section 8.4 of the Arundel land use ordinance have been met. Therefore, be it resolved that based on the above findings and conclusions, the Arundel Planning Board hereby approves the final subdivision plan of Philip Labby for the development of a 2-lot commercial subdivision and a 4-lot cluster residential subdivision on 20.76 acres called Ledgewood Meadows, located at 14 Ledgecliff Drive, tax map 4 lots 24 and 25B in the AR district as shown on the approved plans and subject to the following conditions. Number 1, the subdivision must be recorded in the York County Registry of Deeds within 90 days of the date upon which the plan is approved and signed by the board, otherwise it shall become null and void. Number 2, no changes, erasures, modifications, or revisions shall be made in any final plan after approval has been given by the board and endorsed in writing on the plan, unless the revised final plan is first submitted and the board approves any modifications.
Question,
Yes, Marty?
field changes.
What field changes?
If there is a, remember how often you do on-site field changes?
Well,
I'm just asking it as a question, because we've come to that before. Don't make a difference? I'm just asking a question.
Depends on the field change, you know,
Yeah.
changing out, I mean, it says in the final plan, it's on the basic plan, I mean, if there's a change in something in the road, fine, but, you know, if there's an indoor
Nothing major.
elevation change, fine, that's a de minimis change. But no
Nothing
shifting
major.
of lines, no shifting of standards, you know, it's the same.
Right.
Okay.
Number 3,
Now, without your approval, I mean,
right.
Phil could come and ask for, you know, change.
Subject to change, yes,
Subject-
that's
subject,
correct.
But it has to be approved by the planning board.
Correct.
Number 3, the approval by the board of a subdivision plan shall not be deemed to constitute or be evidence of any acceptance by the municipality of any street, easement, or other open space shown on such plan. Number 4, failure to complete substantial construction of the subdivision within 2 years of the date of the approval of the plan shall render the plan null and void. Number 5, the fire pond shall be constructed and approved by the fire chief prior to the issuance of building permits for more than 50% of the lots in the subdivision. Number 6, at least 5 days prior to commencing construction of required improvements, the subdivider or builder shall: A, notify the code enforcement officer and town planner in writing of the commencement of construction of such improvements so that the municipal officers can cause inspection to be made to assure that all municipal specifications, requirements, and conditions of approval shall be met during the construction of required improvements and to assure the satisfactory completion of improvements and utilities required by the board. B, deposit with the municipal officers a check for the amount of 2% of the estimated cost of the required improvements to pay for the costs of inspection. If upon satisfactory completion of construction and cleanup there are funds remaining, the surplus shall be refunded to the subdivider or builder as appropriate. If the inspection account shall be drawn down by 90%, the subdivider or builder shall deposit an additional 1% of the estimated cost of the required improvements. Between November 1st and November 15th, the town shall, at the expense of the subdivider, have the site inspected by a qualified individual. By December 1st of each year following the during which construction was done on the site, the inspector shall submit a report to the board based on that inspection, addressing whether stormwater and erosion control measures, both temporary and permanent, are in place, are properly installed, and appear adequate. The report shall also include a discussion and recommendation of any problems that were encountered. I have a question for you on that, Ted. The dates seem kind of weird. November 1st and November 15th, so he's gonna go through and do all of the work, and then sometime in November of next year, we're gonna go out and inspect it?
That's what the law says.
Oh, okay, if that's,
Now, luckily, we don't have a lot of subdivisions, so that can be done, but when we have a lot of subdivisions, you're right.
it just seems
It's
kind of strange.
impossible.
Today's January, so
Right.
we're gonna wait until November. Okay.
But no, this is for close down for this, you know, what this is this is for seasonal close down of a road project.
Oh, okay.
We don't have snow by then?
It's just like Roger won't accept pavement after October. Well, then the plants are open, why not? Because that's what the ordinance says in the street opening.
Okay. Number 8, upon completion of street construction, the subdivider shall submit to the town planner as-built plans of all infrastructure improvements. Number 9, the subdivider shall be required to maintain all improvements and provide for snow removal on streets and sidewalks until their control is placed with a lot owners association. Number 10, the subdivider shall record a deed transferring ownership to the association within 45 days of final completion and inspection of the subdivision. A copy of the recorded deed shall be submitted to the town planner within 60 days of final approval. So approved by the Arundel Planning Board this 28th day of January 2016.
So-
Gentlemen, what's your pleasure?
Approved.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the findings of fact and subdivision and the final plans. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Congratulations, Bill.
Thank you.
Time to go out and play on the road now.
Yeah.
Because we have rather large audience, this is kind of tedious, and I apologize. But it's work that we've already done, we just have to go through the formality of you making the approvals with all of these items we've already looked at and researched. So we apologize for the long drawn-out event.
No, but it also shows due diligence.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, this next item that is on the agenda
Thank you, gentlemen.
is for Brookside Estates. And according to the subdivision ordinance, there was a mistake made on December 10th, when the preliminary approval was granted. Under 11(1)(I), if I can find it, of the subdivision ordinance, and I just saw it a minute ago. But according to that section of the plan, we are required to have had findings of fact approved at that meeting before we went through and granted approval of the preliminary application. We erred.
Yeah, so we didn't do formal findings of fact.
We have not done formal findings of fact, therefore that permit should or that preliminary application should never have been approved. We can handle this in one of two ways. Under Robert's Rules of Order, I would entertain a motion that says that we rescind that application, or under Robert's Rules of Order, I can make a motion that says that it was improper and should never have occurred, and is therefore rescinded.
And then
we go through, we do the
we
approval
need to
of
do
the
the
findings of fact,
findings of
and then
fact.
we do the approval again. The end result is the same.
Do we have the findings of fact?
I have not finished any findings of fact till I find out what you guys are gonna do. Because, you know, the findings of fact we just went through are for final approval. We have no checklist of findings of fact for preliminary approval, by the way. So we have to cobble something together from this.
Yeah, but we're not
If we're
giving
gonna,
final.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure I can use Robert's Rules of Order in a situation like this.
Well, I'm just.
Because in Robert's Rules of Order, if you're rescinding something, if you're gonna rescind a motion, it has to be done at the next meeting, and the next meeting is January 14th.
Okay, good point. I just like Robert's.
I know.
Bobby's a good
The
guy.
problem is if you live by Robert's.
But that's
you
true,
die by
we,
Robert's.
okay, but you're right, it creates a problem, if we
Yeah.
don't have any kind of a checklist or any kind of a standard to go through, even given that, we need to pay attention to what the requirements of the ordinance are. And the requirements of the ordinance were that we do a findings of fact before approval of the preliminary subdivision.
Question for you, sir.
Yes.
New board. What have we done in the past? We've given,
The
as
last,
a guideline, what have we used as a guideline in the past?
as a guideline in the past, I don't remember the last time we did any kind, other than the Phil Abbey subdivision, I don't remember the last time we did a subdivision, quite honestly. I may not have even been on the board, it was that long ago that we did a subdivision. We did the seasonal cottages,
Well, seasonal cottages.
but
Well,
we've
we
always
also-
done
we
findings
also-
of fact.
Did we not also do one at the time on, I think it was on Pulse Road? There was a 2-unit plus 1
Okay.
which was
And I-
which is a minor subdivision, but it is,
It wasn't a major, it was a minor.
but I'm just saying, using that as of the last one, if I'm recalling
I
correctly.
think that was
Mr.
that was yours.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's why I'm asking.
I do not remember, I'll be honest about it. It was quite a while back, and I don't remember how that process worked. I'm simply looking at it going, this is what the ordinance says that we're supposed to do. We need to follow the ordinance, we need to be consistent. And if we have, in the past, if we have not done that appropriately, does not mean that we should not start doing it correctly now.
I have a question. Is the applicant aware of this?
I wasn't aware of it until just the other day.
Just thinking in fairness to, that just put him in, into a bind. Just because you said we can't, we're not ready to find the fact, we don't have him written up, so.
Even if we did, we're not at a final,
It's not final.
not a final plan anyway, so we still have time and other things that we have to go through before we ever get to the final application. Jim, you look like you were gonna have.
Well, I mean, I guess, given what you've said, it doesn't seem like we have much recourse, rather than to do things the appropriate way. Is it findings of fact something that you could have ready for the next meeting?
Yeah, or else we can use this as the template for me to use, to go through this, because there's certain things in here that you can't have done at the preliminary level. That's one of the problems. If you go through the same checklist, the applicant doesn't have his covenants.
And we had-
Because we don't require
Well,
that for the.
but I remember we had a conversation, and I disagreed with you in the premise of what the standards were for preliminary plan approval.
Right.
And those to me, unless, convinced otherwise, would be what the findings of facts would be based off of.
Okay.
No, okay.
I don't have the subdivision ordinance right in front of me.
I can provide you with one.
But also too, at the same time, in past, if it's been approved as a completed application, and we have not gone as a preliminary prior to this until final, I don't see how we can actually turn around and submit, do something as a preliminary.
The process, there should be a different set of findings of facts.
Very honestly, gentlemen, the standard procedure in Arundel has historically been, because I went through the record today, because this is a contentious issue. I went through the record and have found that the planning board has historically never done a findings of fact. And in fact, they didn't do a findings of fact for when they approved final subdivision in many projects and left it to the planner to write it after the fact.
How old were those applications? How old were those?
2008.
2008, okay. So we're
That's the
talking,
last subdivision aside from Sylvain's and then from Cape Arundel that we've had. So the last major was, and that was, and actually the subdivision that we had for Cape Arundel was also conditional use.
so we're looking at something that is more than 7 years old,
Right.
that we haven't done anything with. So even given that and the fact that 7 years ago we violated the standards in the ordinance, I see no reason we should continue to do so.
Well, my other question is, how about also down farther down Old Post Road? We had another, it was supposed to be a family subdivision, but there was a private party where a road had to come back into meet standards.
That was a private way application. That was not a subdivision standard, that was a private way application. So that was went under private ways and not under any other, under conditional use or subdivision. The division was not even a family division, it was just a statutory division which you divide a piece of land after 5 years. And that's what that involved.
Question, are we saying that we need to go through this lengthy type of
That's my
final
question.
step?
We don't have a finding of fact to go through, we don't have,
Does he
we have
need
not,
a,
this is
have like a
defined
template.
within, right, we don't have a template to go through.
does he need?
This
a
wouldn't
preliminary?
apply, this,
It would not,
no.
that's the final, and that's
It's
part
a
of
different
the.
set of criteria, the information that is, we're waiting, so we're not even, we couldn't even, be ready for some of these.
Well, you know, you could, and the point is you'd have to cobble together and make a decision,
We don't-
which ones apply and which ones
We
don't.
don't even know what these are, that's the problem.
Right.
These are the performance standards that are specified in
We've
section
never
11.
done it, we've never decided on,
We don't,
I'm really concerned that this is gonna delay this application.
Right.
The applicant has already gone through a long period of, conformance to various things. They're already delayed. If this is gonna delay them further, I'm not very happy about it.
I don't know how this would delay them further, since we're not at the point of doing a final review anyway.
Well, what's the difference? If we rescind this, that means they don't have preliminary approval, which means they have to stop all work, doesn't it?
No.
No,
No,
no, they can,
If you don't have preliminary approval, you can't start your project.
Well, no,
Can't
because
start
They can't start it anyway.
we are waiting the final application from, with all the materials that were specified in the December 10th approval motion. And also those specified in here in the final application checklist. We're waiting for that for the applicant. I talked to the applicant's engineer via email, and he's ready to submit it, hopefully by the next meeting.
But what we usually look for in the preliminary application, the pre-app approval, is that all of the documentation is in
just
place.
completion.
Yeah,
And that we found to be in place.
yeah, but, no, we don't have the covenants. We don't have final
No,
revised.
not the final, the covenants come with the final.
Right. Are you talking
Just what
preliminary?
matters.
No, you found that everything he needed for preliminary was submitted.
The
Right,
submissions were
so
complete.
I would suggest that that is the findings of fact. We don't have any standard for findings of fact at this stage. So it would take us months to come up with the checklist. Until we do, I'd say that completion is the findings of fact.
for the,
Approval, yeah.
so our deeming the application to be complete would be tantamount to saying, here's your preliminary approval.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes.
We have nothing else
I
to
don't
talk
know-
about.
I don't know if I'd put it that way.
But that's what
Right.
Tom is saying. If they give us all of the information we need to determine that it's complete, that is the preliminary.
Well, that's what we would be
And
looking
I'm
for.
not sure that
I
I
don't think
would, but
that's
I
true.
don't know.
I don't believe that's true, because what you're doing is evaluating what they submit. I mean, you could submit that we're gonna dump straight pipe our sewer right into Russ Mills Brook. And terrific, yeah, it's a complete application, that's our plan, it doesn't meet the standard. So
But it doesn't mean-
you can't equate apples and oranges there. I mean, what we've done in the past is said that they've met the preliminary submission standards showing that this project can go forward to final.
Okay.
That's basically what's happened in the past.
But
Well,
how do
that's
we-
what-
From
how
what
do
I
we
can
de-
see in the record.
But that's the question, how do we determine what those preliminary standards are to go forward? I understand the dilemma, I really do understand the issue. I'm stuck with the fact that the ordinance says something different.
And what the other thing is, point blank, is preliminary approval or whatever else, what does that give the developer? What, does the developer need that, for what purpose?
Because it's a three-step process, Mark, by state statute.
All right, but
Under 4403 or 1, it's a three-step process. We didn't invent this process, this is a state process. We've added a lot of stuff to it, but we didn't invent this.
if I can make a suggestion, historically, the planning board has acted the way we did act in this case. We are now finding a problem with, well, it may or may not be a problem, but a potential problem with
Future.
our procedures, we shouldn't apply that to an applicant midway through. If we want to look at that and rectify it and set up standards to follow in the future for future applications, fine, I'm all for that. But historically, this is the way the board has done it. I wouldn't want to change that mid-application.
I agree. I think it's not fair to the applicant to make this, it's our doing. We don't even know what we'd be looking for. It wouldn't be fair to say, hold off, we're gonna come up with something for you. We might have, I'd rather keep moving forward. I agree with you, John.
I agree.
Okay.
So you started this with either a motion from the board or a motion from yourself, so let's follow through on that.
Make a motion from the board then. If you want to proceed forward, make a motion and we will ignore this. But it will be the last time that we do it. From this point forward, we are going to follow the ordinance. I understand the problem. You guys voted, you said to Jason, go ahead and do the job. I don't have a problem with that. And we can continue on that line, but from this point forward, we have to follow the ordinance, because it's not fair to anybody to say
We have
to
our
him.
homework. We have
Yeah,
to.
I don't think you're gonna get any disagreement. on
I
that.
can't say to Jason, you can do this, and then go, and I'm pulling a complete, like, go to Joe and say, well, no, Joe, you have this other standard that you have to meet. So if we're gonna do that from this point forward, any new application, we're gonna have to say, you have to meet these, this is the requirement, and you're right, we're gonna have to come up with some kind of a checklist that we can go through and develop.
Okay.
Subject to prior finding. 'Cause
No, we're talking
I know,
about the
I know.
preliminary.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, because we've always done that at final. This is,
You know, there's a really easy way to resolve that issue. The ordinance says we have to review findings of fact before we give the preliminary approval.
we have,
No, we haven't. We don't have findings of fact. The easy solution to that is to change the ordinance, so that we don't have to do findings of fact for a preliminary approval.
That's enough.
Now,
I'll
where
make
is
a
that,
motion
where's
for
that?
that.
in
It
the
was
ordinance?
11, we can't. It was 11-1L.
Well, let's look at that later. I think I'd like to move forward. We have such a full.
We
mess
do.
here.
We've got a bunch of stuff that
So, just to
we're gonna
move
have
forward, I'm
to
gonna
deal
throw
with.
out a motion that we allow this to go forward based on past precedent of actions of the board and subdivisions. Part of that motion, I guess, should include that we need to address
Revise.
this issue, revise the, or at least figure it out at a future date.
Okay. Okay, so a motion has been made. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll support that also.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any other discussion?
Tom, on that revision that you have there,
Yeah.
can you possibly, as a thought, put a revision of eliminating or correcting the ordinance so that we can eliminate, like as we were saying,
Well,
I just throw it out.
I'd rather wait,
Yeah, let's-
we'll have that as part of the discussion, whether we should eliminate it or revise it.
Okay.
How we handle that?
Yeah, how we handle it.
Okay. A motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Yes.
All those opposed? 4-1. I'm opposed. I want to follow the ordinance simply because that's what the ordinance says.
Okay. Passed.
It passes. Congratulations. We don't have to revisit that.
What just passed? I have no idea what you're
No,
talking about.
what we have said is that we are not going to.
Nothing's changed since
Nothing-
December 10th.
I understand that, and that's, yeah, I know, I'm
That's it.
fully aware of that. but-
Jason, the ordinance says that we're supposed to have findings of fact.
Yeah.
Before you got your preliminary approval, you didn't, there were no findings of fact.
What's missing on the finding of facts?
There aren't any. When you got that preliminary approval on December 10th, there were no findings of fact to go along with it.
What we just read for Phil,
Yeah.
the findings of fact.
What's missing on my part, though? What-
Oh, that's,
No, what's missing was the planning board didn't read the findings of fact.
Well,
They made a decision.
It's a procedure.
but it was
It's a
for a
procedure,
preliminary
right.
plan instead of a final.
it's a procedural technicality that, you know, and it's not gonna have any impact.
we're gonna do this when you're final.
Don't fish it.
Right.
Right.
We're gonna go through this when you're final, but,
Okay, so we're gonna
what are
continue
you
on.
looking for, Jim? You looking for this reference?
Yeah. I mean, I don't need to find it tonight.
Okay. Okay,
We can-
we're gonna continue on.
So,
What we have,
Drinking?
well, we can't because we don't have the findings of fact, and we've decided that we've made a decision for this purpose, and we don't have to go through and read the findings of fact. So we're done for today. We do need some information, and I don't know who,
I've
got
got
all
all
the
those
paperwork.
we need to get,
okay,
okay?
they know what.
His
it's-
engineer
okay.
knows.
Your engineer knows, okay.
And to my understanding, Leah has everything, that's all we're waiting for, is a sign off from Leah, town attorney.
Yeah, I'll have to check on that. I think Leah's got some stuff she, well, it's, Leah and your attorney are working on it, but I understand your attorney is, well, I understand the two of them are working. I talked to her 2 days ago, and they said they were working on it together.
So where do I stand right now?
So,
Like, when I
we have
get
to
it,
submit a final plan submission.
preliminary approval is, we're good to go.
It's the same as.
It's the same as before you,
It's the
December
same
the
as it
10th.
was in December 10th.
Sandy didn't even come tonight.
Huh? I'm trying to, but I can't.
hey, tea time.
Okay, item number 3, Bentley's Campground Conditional Use Pre-Application Sketch Plan. A proposal to expand the existing RV campground in 5 additional phases, developing an additional 137 new sites with utility hookups and support facilities on 46.28 acres, tax map 30, lot 24, located at 1601 Portland Road in the DB2 district. Bentley Warren III is the applicant, Rick Light of Light Environmental Design, the applicant's agent. Turn it over to Rick.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm a little embarrassed. I had my easel, not knowing that there would be one or not. I always carry one in my other
You
car.
mean Paul took your easel?
The phone took it, so I'm gonna have to use props here, and we'll make it work. Yeah, a little less sophisticated than we'd like to be, but I think it'll work if everybody can see this. Good. So, tonight I have Andy Caskey and Al Frick with me tonight to answer questions and dive in on certain subjects. I think the idea of being here tonight was, one, to sort of follow up from our meeting of 2 weeks ago on a couple of the punch list items, and as we work towards a formal final submission to the planning board. And 2 was to really discuss fire protection, which was really one of the hot items in that meeting. And we understand there was a meeting with the chief, the planning board and the chief, and so I guess as a workshop item, we'd like to, I guess, hear what if anything the chief had to say, or what concerns that we need to be, what things we need to be concerned about for our application, so we can move that forward.
My takeaway from that meeting with the chief was that you guys are good to go.
I believe we have the
do
chief's
have a letter.
memo, which she sent to me today. I don't know if he sent it to you.
I don't know.
Here,
Let's see it.
I will read it for you. Mr. Redway, after meeting with Mr. Light in reference to Bentley's campground expansion phases 2 through 7, with the expansion of the existing pond and the installation of a dry hydrant in said pond, this should provide adequate fire protection to the campground. The campground must also keep the dry hydrant and all roads in the campground clear to allow access for emergency vehicles. The fire department will inspect the installation and then flow test the dry hydrant upon its completion. Once the installation and test of the hydrant is complete, the fire department will do a final inspection and approval. Bruce E. Mullen, Chief, Arundel Fire Rescue. And that has today's date on it, Thursday, January 28th.
Is the board in concurrence with those recommendations?
If the chief is happy with it, I'm happy
Yeah,
with it.
we always defer to the fire chief on
Okay.
matters that
I
requires.
can speak.
Yes, you can, Marty. We would like to have a hydrant, but yes, you can.
I would prefer, truthfully, since this is new in the DB2 zone, as setting a precedent, I would love to have a hydrant so that we can set precedent for now and for the future.
A hydrant at Route 1 or in the, I mean, in the project?
If it's over more than 1,000 feet in the project. I'm running my mouth, but this is what I feel along the way.
I agree with you 100%, Marty, because it's such a distance with such a density of use and a lot of flames, but if the fire chief is comfortable with it seems like it would be good to have just more safety features, but.
Well, I think, I mean, I don't want to, we've talked about fire protection in the past. Bentley takes fire protection very seriously for obvious reasons. Again, the issue here is that we're proposing the fire pond, and we did, as you mentioned at the last meeting, where we proposed or are willing to propose putting these 2,000-gallon tanks around the campsites. Chief didn't think that was really necessary, because if they respond to a fire, they've got a 3,000 to 4,000-gallon tanker, and they can pump from the pond. An item that was discussed, we discussed internally, was possibly where we have water on Route 1, would be to put a hydrant at the entrance of Route 1. Because there isn't one, there's not one, there's one at the corner up here, that's the business park, there's one in the business park. Next one down is down by you, correct, Marty? So that would be an option where we have water right there.
It's better than none,
That's
not what I want, but but I'm not the fire chief either.
What's the volume of that, the fire department?
I couldn't tell you right now, but we will provide that information with our application. We were asked for that, Chief.
Okay, the thing that seems obvious to me is the distance, what is it, 3,000 feet from the fire pond to Route 1, and I'm not even sure where the nearest hydrant is on that end, so.
It's in the business park next door.
Okay.
And also up next to me,
Next to you.
across the street, that's
Further
the
away.
closest.
Yeah,
So I mean,
it could be 6,000 feet.
Well, the
No,
problem
it's
with
not.
Marty's, yours is on your side of the street, isn't it?
no,
It is on the other side?
it's
Okay.
on their side,
Okay.
okay, so I mean,
I was just saying, if it's on
no.
your side, we have to close Route 1, that'll never happen.
well, you know, like I said, this is my thoughts and wishes, but I don't have the final say. But I'm trying to think of overall safety and for future precedents. Because anything after 1,000 feet, you're going into a different category.
Right, I understand.
And
That's
I
why.
also too know that on that side of the road, if along the way, a left-hand, right-hand turn lane would be there, you would have to consider it be out of the way of your right-hand turn lane.
Right.
I mean, I'm just throwing out as,
Right. And I just put in, we have to consider that and get it, it'd have to be approved through the town and through the Kennebunk Water District.
yes,
And it would be, they put it to their standards, and then obviously they have to consider the
As
ditch.
far as
Yeah.
as far as the chief was concerned, and we questioned him about it, but he says, with that pond there, using a 5-inch hose, he's gonna be able to pump water 2,000 feet and without having a problem. Okay, he's the chief, you know,
But-
I'm gonna take his word for it.
but if you wanna put one there, it's a good idea.
We'd be delighted to have one, but it's not gonna be contingent upon anything. What the chief says, you don't need one.
We'll discuss it with Bentley. Go ahead, Alan.
But the fire pond would be going into the stormwater pond for phases. That pond treats all other phases beyond this phase that we're talking about. The existing stormwater is gonna be handled by that wetland as we saw on the sidewalk. So that would be coming, as proposed from Bentley's team, that the pond would be kicked in on the next phase.
Called phase 3.
Well, I think
We
our
understand
big,
that, right?
yeah, we do understand that. I think our big concern was that it's a long ways off.
Mm.
you know.
it'd be much nicer to drop the hydrant on the way in, than to have to go all the way in, grab the hydrant, and come back, or back right to the hydrant.
We will talk to Bentley, I'm pretty sure we can, I won't stand to speak to Bentley, agree to that, putting a hydrant at Route 1 would basically provide a very close service for laying pipe through the bulk of this development. And at that point,
Yeah.
again, the next phase, you'd have to develop the pond, you're closer to the pond at that point. So I think we're covered, that would cover you both ways, and it's actually an easy pipe lay up that, the main access road, it's not a jungle of street, roads to get into the main campground. So I would think that would be more than sufficient, and again, I think Bentley has these, you know, for small, if there were to be a campfire, small fire, there are backpack units
Right.
spaced around the campground, so those small sort of events.
I think the biggest concern that I have on the whole thing is the proximity of the RVs to each other.
Right.
If you get bad weather, windy weather, and one of those goes, who knows how far that's gonna go down the line. But that's, you know, that's.
Crystal ball.
That's the 100-year storm that's gonna happen, so, you know, not having Marty's infamous crystal ball, I don't know. But from a fire point of view, I think we're fine.
So we're good, we'll discuss it with Bentley. So related to that, and I almost hate to bring this up, but because it's a double-edged sword, there was a discussion about using the pond from the board standpoint. The chief is still okay using that tote road, the current tote road, to get to the pond in its current condition. He's familiar with that? Because there was a discussion with the board last time about that, but he's satisfied with that?
Yep.
Okay.
Well,
The chief was.
they were gonna look at it, make sure it
Okay,
had, you
okay.
know, it passed specs, but
Right.
as long as it's up to specs, yes.
Yeah, as long as it'll handle the fire truck, he was happy.
So we'll set up a meeting with the chief and review that and walk that with him.
If you're gonna take the grab sample, just for the heck of it, it's a 5,600-pound truck that he's
I think you mentioned 50,000.
Yeah. Okay.
So the toll road is gonna stay there?
The tote road is there.
That's it.
Well, that wasn't in the according to his letter, the
Is it
first
just-
letter submitted by him,
I don't know if the same one. that-
January the 26th.
Yeah, I saw the letter.
Is that the same road? But the one that you're thinking of is close to the edge, this is almost, it's more towards the middle of the
No,
property.
they're talking about the same toll
The
road
same
we're
one?
talking about.
No, we're talking about.
Something's not scaling right on the maps.
Yep, and I do think you're talking about the same tote road,
Yes.
but
But our problem is that the fire department is going to use that road to access the pond,
Absolutely.
right?
Yes.
So is that road legal? Is
Well,
that road legal? That's the big
they're-
question.
They're going to be talking with the fire chief to make sure that that road is capable.
No, we gotta be talking to the planning board, too. On the first plans, that road, the toll road was not there. So, we gotta discuss that.
If that road is part of the campground, this is gonna be discussed.
I have walked in the campground on sidewalks before, and for as long as I've done it, that road has been there.
Yeah,
So I
like-
don't know when
Back
the
in
road
two
went in.
thousand six, excuse me, sir, but in 2006, somebody didn't see the house.
I
That- our house.
I was not on the board in 2006.
Okay, I'm
So
sorry.
I don't know on that.
Well,
So that's
what
why
we-
all the problems we've been
Okay.
having for 8 years.
We gotta go back on the plans, the first plans have been approved in the town of Arundel, the first plans, that road was not existing.
Rick, yes. If you can go back into your files right now on Bentley Warren's first, when he developed the campground, the very first one, which is right here. That was surveyed by David Bouffard, who's a surveyor, and the alignment of that road is on that very plan. That was there when he bought the land and when he developed, and when you approved the very first phase, that road shows up exactly in the same spot
So
that it
then
is now.
why isn't
So we'll
it-
have, you know, we
Sign
can
plans, yeah.
obviously look at the plans to see if it's there. Because there seems to be, you say it's not there, you say it is there, it's something that we'll have to look
It was on
at.
the first plans.
And I had it with us when we did the sidewalk.
Signed plans by the town, that's what you would look at.
Yes,
Okay,
Mr. Chair,
let's-
one of the important things to remember about this road is it's an internal access road not used by campers.
It's not supposed to be.
And not supposed to be. There was a conversation last time about, vendors, people getting through, and we've taken that to heart. Bentley will put gates up to preclude vendors from coming into Old Post Road. workers coming through there, but the whole point was, that's a private road essentially for workers from Bentley's site, his lot, to get back and forth there without having to go on the roadway. So when we guys use the term road, it's really, it's an internal tow road. It's not part of the campground proper, per se. It's within the campground area. It's not one of the campground roads with campsites on it that the campers.
So it's part of the campground?
So,
It's within the campground, but it's not used by
So
the
it's part
campers.
of it?
but that traffic from Bentley's yard to the campground, so it's an access. So what are you saying it is?
The access for construction, what we're proposing is.
Construction?
We're talking about making a separate road, a separate access that's further away from you.
You're gonna be closing the other one off, or,
It'll only be used for Bentley's
so
personal
you're
use.
gonna have 3 access now?
Well, you just said you're gonna use that road for the dry pond.
The
For emergencies.
Yeah,
For emergencies.
like on the sidewalk, there was 3 vehicles that went by. There was
We
emergency.
understand that, and we've talked to the board, speaking to the chairman, we've talked to the board about controlling the use of that for vendors and workers that are coming to the site. To be clear, when we're talking fire access, and there's some fire people on the board, the planners, the fire department, I believe under state statute, a fire truck and emergency vehicle does not need a right to use a road. They can use your driveway, they can use, if they see a need. So that would be no different than a person's private driveway if somebody had an elder person who required personal care services from time to time. The expectation that they would come, and I guess I'd look to the history. When was the last time there was a fire at the campground that we know of? I can't speak personally, but I doubt there's been a whole lot of calls, and the chief's only call that he recalled was within several, meaning several, not a lot, we can go, I don't want to speak to the chief, safety or, emergency calls. Yeah, personal calls, ambulance calls, but no fire calls that he could recall for the history of the campground. So speaking to that, this would be very infrequently used, and if it was used a lot, I think there'd be a real problem with the campground. We've run into a lot of fires, so I wouldn't expect it to be used a whole lot.
Mr. Fleshman, that was here planning before, when this passed on the first plan, there was 1 access to the campground, 1 access. And it's on the first plans. So I hope the planners, all the planners here will revise that. One access.
We have talked about the fact there is not supposed to be an access off Old Post Road. It's being closed. They're gonna gate it so that people can't get through. We had that same problem. We don't want traffic
It's not
dumping
a
out
big road,
onto
right?
Old Post Road. So they're gonna have to gate that, and they're gonna have to close it off somehow.
But not only that, I mean, that road, that tote road was a four-wheeler road. It was a four-wheeler trail. And over the years, it got to be a highway. So how did it get to be that way, without
Because
the
it's-
town's approval?
It doesn't need the town's approval inside the campground.
Really?
It's a campground.
Really?
It's not a public road. It's not even a private road. It's just
It's part of the
a
campground.
way to get around.
It may
Can I
not be a
speak here?
campsite, but it's
not
part of the
public.
campground.
I saw commercial vehicles going by there, and you're saying it's not
And
public?
it is not, and we have put in
You
place.
you were a
I was
witness
there,
there.
yes, I understand what you're saying, and we have told them that they can't do that. They have to close it off somehow.
So then,
I
all
mean,
we're
there's-
asking is that planning board does their work and do what they have to do.
It will be
to-
part of the conditions of approval that
Okay.
gets closed off.
That's all we're
There's
asking.
nothing else that we can do.
Well, we got notations for you to look over,
Yep.
revise them,
And,
and then we'll go further.
and we'll look at the plans from 2006 and see if indeed that is on the plans.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Back at you.
And again, just for edification, the one, just repeat what we talked about last time, what we're proposing is for construction, to honor and to not violate the use of that road, is to have a construction access road that goes to the back area here, which is the farthest part of the site, away from the neighbors, so I think, and that will work for construction vehicles, and that will be managed, so you go through the farthest part of the campground.
That far end of the construction, right down here, that's actually on Bentley's property?
This is Bentley's private property.
It is, okay.
What's that, is that a house that's in that area, or is that, what's
This
that?
is the new, called the museum, as we called it.
That's already there?
It's there.
Yep, it is there.
Is that open to the public?
Not yet.
And not yet.
Greg, what is the,
Museums up, I'm sure,
Go ahead, Jim.
museums,
It's a joke.
He calls it.
He calls it a
Okay, so
museum.
it's-
It's
He stores vehicles and
Okay, so it's just
cars.
his own private collection.
It's his collection.
Extensive
It's a,
and pretty.
it's a garage on steroids, that's what it's happening.
Rick, question about the construction. Is that the staging area it's gonna be there, or are you still advocating going out Old Post Road to go around with bringing in material?
No, we talked about coming up for Route 1 at the last meeting.
Okay, good. I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure.
yeah, off of Route 1 with the, so they will be, the whole point is to try to minimize, obviously, the trust. Andy will do as much work as he possibly can outside the seasonality of it, but there's gonna be some, because you have such a short construction season. And so we'll try to minimize that, and that.
Off-season.
Off-season, yeah, and that minimizes that.
So that'll be a staging area, that's why it goes out.
Yeah, we'll be packing equipment over there.
Yeah, nighttime equipment will come back, and that way it's secured as well, yeah.
What's the characteristics of the property that's adjacent to that road where it comes along the property line? Yep.
This is all entirely wooded, it's undeveloped for almost this whole.
quite a
It's in the
distance back.
DB2, which is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, other people own that property.
Over here.
Yeah.
Yes. And there's a deed, I don't know if it's separate, this is one.
Yes.
I think, Bend over.
Yeah.
One
And
part.
some,
And
some,
where's
some,
Maurice?
there's a large collection of people.
There's actually another toll road out there.
Yeah, there's also a cell tower too.
There used to be a lot of tote roads through there. That's what you used to use horses for on the tote roads. You didn't have motorized vehicles then.
One of the things that we did talk about, and I think Al might have copies of the septic system for the next phase has been designed, and that will be part of our application. Albert has.
I can drop those off here,
If you
just so it's
want
safer
for
for
staff.
mailing.
We've got extra copies, so that's been completed, that will be put on the final plan.
Just give them that. Now.
Other than that, Al, Andy, are there any other items we need to discuss before to complete our final application?
It just reduces my, what I have. Okay.
Thank you.
Winterization? Oh, that's the storage of the RV storage. Oh, the issue that brought up last time, sorry, the RV storage. And those are, I guess I wanted to get the position of the board, those are personal RVs of Bentleys, they're not used during off-season, they're not for commercial use, they're not occupied. You just store them where it just makes sense. Is that still a concern of the board?
Yes. I don't know about the rest of the board, it's a concern of mine. They're not supposed to be there under the ordinance.
Richard, I have a question on that, and maybe Pat has the actual ordinance, but if you look, it's 11.4.6. It doesn't, it seems to read that it doesn't have to be occupied, it cannot be occupied and it cannot be used for commercial use.
The site can't be occupied, not the unit, it's
Needs to be
about the
a-
site.
Right.
And I was wondering what that really is.
I can read the section if you want to. 8383?
Yes.
No trailers other than recreational vehicles or utility trailers is defined herein shall be permitted within any campground temporarily or otherwise. No camping unit shall be stored or exhibited for sale or commercial purposes within the park. A time limit is placed upon the occupancy of any one camping space on a continued basis as follows. You have 12 weeks for the period May 12th to September 15th of each year, and 2 weeks for all of the time, so a 2-week period out of the season. Only camping units such as defined herein, RVs, etc., plus a towing vehicle shall be permitted with any campground, temporary or otherwise. So it's, the key thing, these aren't being used for commercial use, it's just a practical thing to store them there.
I'm confused, are they camping units? They're RVs that are.
They're RVs.
They're not.
Are they, I wasn't there. Are they trailers? Are they motorized RVs?
They're trailers.
They're trailers, all that we saw during the sidewalk were trailers and no RVs.
Oh, RV is an RV. Trailer is an RV. That's why I was asking the question. Okay, you see where I'm going at now?
Like a fifth wheel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah,
Either you put it on a ball, you put it on a fifth wheel. It still has to be tagged. It still has to be dragged around.
The trailers,
Huh?
the trailers.
Yeah.
Seems like when they wrote this, they basically didn't want year-round parking of trailers.
That's the way I read that and interpreted it.
Well,
Is
it
that
says
they're not
for sale
supposed-
or commercial purposes.
No, it doesn't say just for sale, for commercial purposes.
It says the time limit is placed for any, on the, as Rick read, the time limit is placed on the occupancy of any one camping space on a continuous basis as follows.
Well,
So it's a
and-
space, it's not whether it's used for commercial, it's basically saying that
Prior to that, there was a.
you don't want
storage.
another red apple, you know, basically that kind of, that's what it's saying.
John, that says no camping unit shall be stored or exhibited for sale for
So-
commercial purposes within the park, so it's, commercial purposes is key. But it's an or,
Yeah.
so it's saying
Can't be
they can't be stored, or you can't do the other thing with it.
How's the hemlock?
And that's the interpretation I got from it, because it says it can't be stored or used for something else, so it can't be there.
What about hemlock?
I don't know what to tell you, don't do hemlock.
Campground.
I understand that.
Again,
That's what my
Marty,
question would be.
I'm looking at it going, what's the ordinance say?
I don't, my question is if they're, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. That's why,
And we just made a decision that we were going to go with what the ordinance says and enforce the ordinance.
I'm not arguing.
And that's my point on the whole thing. That's one of the reasons I have a problem when we look at the ordinance and we go this way, or what's the ordinance say?
what if for a solution, if it was moved to a designated area, not on the site, not on the campsite?
Oh, if he took it back to his property?
Well, that would be one option, but what about on his existing, the DB2 area, on the campground parcel, but put it into a yard, if you would, where it's not occupying the site? And then I was kind of wondering, what are we really gaining by that exercise, if it was possible?
You mean out of sight, out of mind?
I'm just looking at the ordinance and this is the world I live in. What does it say? This is what it says. That's what has to be
What
done.
I'm asking is if it was moved off the designated approved campsite for, that he's renting in the summer for camping use, and put it into an upland area on the site that's away from visual, being able to be seen, would that meet the interpretation of the rules?
Well, as long as it wasn't occupied.
Well, I don't know, it
It's-
says no unit should be stored or exhibited within the park.
No, it's stored or exhibited within the park, so he could put it on his own property, but he can't leave it in the park.
You could put it in a property property.
Well,
His own,
It's-
his own
it's-
property.
it's an
To me, what
interesting-
this is sort of boiling down to is, he's had large area, and admittedly, a lot of flexibility to do what he wants on a very large piece of property. But as this becomes more intensely developed as a commercial site, he needs to, I would think he'd want to have a stronger delineation between his commercial venture and his personal venture.
Well, what is that saying, Jim? I mean, what we were.
So if that's a personal camper, move it to his own personal, personal property. I know he owns it all, but, where his residence, other buildings would be.
And he does have other personal property back there. A fair number of.
Is the purpose of that requirement, and we all know, like in campgrounds, when something isn't moved, they tend to then get a platform for a deck, and they get skirting, and they get hanging lights, and it starts to be more permanent type of situation. And we didn't see any of that out there during our sidewalk. But is the purpose of that ordinance to prevent that from happening? What is the actual purpose of that standard? Is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, our reading of that is slightly different, it's sort of the English of that way it was written. I can see how it can be understood both ways. Our thinking was that the ordinance, the intent of that was to stop, to prohibit commercial use and year-round occupancy for obvious reasons, to make it years. And this is not a commercial use, it's just a private storage on a campground. And obviously there's two interpretations, but that was sort of the way we were reading it.
But what happens to those units during the summertime then? There's, what, 3 or 4 units that were sitting up on the hill?
Mhm.
What does he do with them in the summertime? Does he move them? Does he leave them there and rent them out? My argument would be that if he rents them out, they're commercial, they're not allowed. If they're his personal space, why would you leave it there when you could rent the space to somebody else? I don't know the answer to those questions, but, you know, that's one of those things that you look at and you say, they're there. They're obviously sitting on some space that he could make, what does he charge per day? I have no idea, but let's just say he charges $30 a day. Well, they're sitting on a space that's costing him thousands of dollars a year between those different sites. It'd be foolish to leave them there unless you were renting them out. At any rate,
I mean, I
that's a
can't speak,
concern that I have.
I can't speak for the intent of the ordinance. I wasn't
We weren't
around
there.
anywhere near when that, but the other concern I would have with, you know, year-round storage of trailers out there, RVs, whatever, would be that it becomes a auto graveyard for RVs that, for whatever reason, can't make it off the property. They get there, you know, they break down, somebody says, you know, I'm not worried about this, can I leave it? And this language would prohibit that.
Through the chair.
Yeah, Mike.
How does it work, and possibly for another reason of this ordinance is, turn around, example like with Red Apple, okay, which is a campground, but there are units there that had stayed there for year-round. But at that same time, once they stayed year-round, they became a taxable entity to the town, because they're there. I mean,
My understanding of the way that works is that they are not taxable entities. They're taxed probably at the same rate that a small mobile home would be, so there's a couple of $100s a year in excise registration fees that they would collect.
I'm just saying
Yeah,
that.
no, but
I mean,
it's an excise tax, it doesn't cover much of anything.
unless you're a park unit, and they would say some of them are. I'm just using that as a question.
It's a legitimate question. It's a very legitimate question to ask. I don't have an answer for you. I asked the code enforcement officer that same question after our last week. His answer to me, and forgive me, Jim, for paraphrasing your comments, but he said that was an existing campground, to his knowledge, where the whole idea of putting in permanent structures or semi-permanent facilities, park models, was going on, to his knowledge, long before he came here.
Correct.
And he believes that it was going on before this campground ordinance.
Correct.
And so therefore, this campground ordinance was essentially to assure that no more red apples would occur. That was his, I mean, that's the connect the dots explanation. Those existed before, this ordinance came along. This ordinance is radically different than, let's say, red apple. So the question, one would assume that the planning board or the town decided that they no longer wanted that type of commercial campground. They'd rather have sites, short-term or seasonal basis, and not long-term permanent basis. And that's more or less what he said. I can't speak about Hemlock because I didn't ask him about Hemlock, but I asked him about Red Apple because that is a very permanent situation that I've been to.
Well, I can verify it, that I was been there long before that, because they used to be a Roger Gun Club. Okay, and that was the main building. But you go back into the 70s and the 80s there, that's when it was.
And so I think Jim's regarding it as a non-conforming use out there.
Okay.
That's how he regards it. So that if they were to do an expansion, say they were to try to do an expansion, expand the whole campground, he would have to come under this ordinance, the expansion would come under this ordinance. So that the continuation of that kind of use to, let's say, new lands would not occur.
Yeah, that's why you can't expand Red Apple Campground.
So it really isn't a decision for the board anyway, it's a decision for the code enforcement officer. On Bentley's, as to whether those units can stay or not.
Well, I mean, yeah.
That's a code issue, right?
Yeah, it's a code issue. The issue for you folks, though, I mean, you're reviewing an application, we're doing an expansion. You certainly, if we were reviewing Red Apple right now for an expansion, if they had violations out there, this board would be within its purview to say, clean those up before we proceed.
Right.
So this board is in a position to say, yeah, if you find those to be in violation of this ordinance, this board has the authority to say,
Correct it.
correct it as part of your approval
But
process.
they haven't been cited as violations, right?
Do you want them cited as violations?
Well, let's put it this way, before violation.
We usually work by, we try to work by
I'd rather work
compliance and
through
not
the
by
chair, I
coercion.
think we can remediate that.
Yeah, and I think I would
That's
rather
right.
that you remediate it than the codes enforcement go pay you a visit.
Right.
I mean, you just, as long as you know our concern about the whole thing.
And we do.
Okay.
Can I go back to the septic plan that we just given? Are we looking at that tonight, or is just to look at?
No, we just received.
We just
If
got
you have a
it.
question, El's here. If you have a
But
question.
if you have a question, we can answer it now or later.
This be a new septic field,
Yes.
and that's in yellow? Confused.
That was just off the side on, was it the third expansion where it was off over the side of the hill?
Yeah, the yellow is where it's proposed for this cluster. And that was in the yarding, or the old yarding area.
Right.
Just on our side of the yard, which is right here.
So is that like, I just don't know enough. Is that a leach field, or is it a storage?
No, that's going to be, if you look at the big plan, 2x3, the red line is the sewer line coming down. And then that would be a disposal system, raised disposal area.
Right here.
Right, and that, the sewer line is all gravity, right?
If you look at the HHE 200, the small, the application itself,
Okay.
all right, and if you turn to page,
Should be two, right?
page 2, you'll see it in better detail. That was conceptually showing where the leach bed is going, but the lines along the proposed campground road with gravity feed down to septic tanks, and then pump over to the disposal system. And there'd be two clusters, one along the front and one along the rear.
So, where are the tanks that I'm having a hard time finding? Are they in red as well? Those are on
The red, are you talking about the red targets?
This
no,
shows,
there's boxes.
right,
Yeah.
this shows where it's going on the site. It's about better plan actually shows where it is in yellow. And the red lines coming down along the road would be the sewer line collecting to a,
From each campsite.
from each campsite and then pump to the field. And the detail is on the HHG 200 form.
Okay, I guess what I don't understand is that wouldn't it have to go into a tank first and then?
Yes.
So,
If,
where's the tank?
It looks like that.
look on page,
So those are little, there's like, the little red squares on there?
Yeah, these are.
Those are the feeds, those are the lines.
and
That's it. Weird. This is,
So this is the leach field.
and those are the
I
tanks.
think those are tanks.
and it'll go to two 1,500, there's four 1,500 gallon tanks, or a total of 6,000 gallons. And there'll be two 1,500 gallon, two 1,500 gallon tanks for each. If I may approach,
Yeah.
show you,
Good. So here and here.
right here.
Yeah.
Here's the detail. So this line comes down here and goes to those two 1,500 gallon tanks in series, and it's pumped up to the field. So this whole cluster gravity feeds to that. And these gravity feed this way and this way to two 1,500 gallon
Just
tanks, and then pumps up to the field.
So is that what the dash line is?
Yes.
Being pumped?
That's the dash line of the two pump lines.
Okay.
The solid line is the 4-inch gravity feed.
That's it. Okay.
This was just conceptual to kind of show, here it is.
Yeah, I couldn't quite make
So
out
it
what
comes
the,
down here to the two septic tanks, pumps up here, and this gravity flows to this tank.
could they be indicated with different line weights or something, just to stand out?
You can do that.
Yeah, just, it's hard for me to find. All right, thanks.
Thank
Thank you.
Question along that line there. Do we have within the present site, or we're gonna call it the phase 2, which is showing this, okay? Okay. Is there a, particularly if you have these bigger RVs, motorhomes or whatever else, do they have, or do you have a particular spot which we would call like a transfer station?
Each
I
site,
know each unit has one,
you're talking about a waste station?
dump station,
Yeah, we have one.
okay.
And that's licensed.
I was trying to be polite. Transfer station, okay?
Yeah.
You empty one tank and you, okay? You're transferring it,
That's right.
okay? Where is that in proximity on this area? Even in the old site or the new site, I mean,
It's on the edge of the berm. It's actually, if you remember the sidewalk, the berm, it's right in this location.
okay, so that's a section that was not being, per se, being used as
Here.
camping.
Within the campground.
It's farther up, it's along the side of the main road.
I mean, along the berm. Back there,
This is the berm right along here.
yes,
And there's a section there where there's no campers. and-
correct, that's what I'm saying is,
Talking.
that's where that particular dump station,
Yes,
we'll
it
call
meets,
it,
it meets
is.
all setback, the
Right,
setback.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's code compliant.
That's what I was just inquiring.
So
Thank you.
I have a question on the septic field there. It appears that it's a raised bed system, correct?
Right.
But it's within, looks like at least 3 campsites and a portion of the road.
That's correct.
How does that work?
It's designed with H20 loading.
Yeah, the chambers?
Right, it's plastic chambers which
Yep.
have H10 by themselves, but they need 18 inches of soil cover above that to dissipate the load bearing.
Okay.
And we actually have the other two systems and the one for Bentley's campground itself. They're all under existing parking.
And functioning
Functioning
well as-
fine. Right, but they have to have H20, into the septic tanks and everything, they have to have H20 load rating
Yep.
capability.
As with the saloon itself, has a large system,
Right.
engineered system up here, which is all H20 under the parking.
Okay.
Any other comments, gentlemen, you guys satisfied? I think we've heard what we need to hear, and I appreciate the workshop items here. Our plan now, I think, is to package up, complete our task items. The plan profile is completed, we're asked to look at water flows, per campsite, and generate that, and I think we've got our parking orders, and then submit the full application to the board, and that will be our next step.
Just out of curiosity, has anything been determined or decided concerning a turning lane on Route 1?
No, we're still waiting for the accident data from DOT.
Okay.
Yep. But we will, by the time, we anticipate submitting shortly, and hopefully we get on the next meeting, or the meeting after. But we expect to have that data as part of our submittal.
What was the criteria for that? No, sorry?
Well, I mean, it's a DOT criteria.
Right,
It's
but
it's basically, it was the wait and, let's wait and see how bad it gets.
Yeah. Three accidents, three accidents from a left-bound, attributed to a left-bound or left-turning motorcycle using that vehicle. 3 within a year in any of the 3-year period, essentially. That's the criteria spelled out in the permit. For phase 1 or phase 2, phase 1 being the campground and the initial saloon, phase 2 being the expanded saloon. So basically, there's 3 accidents in a 1-year period in any of the first 3 years, that would trigger the left turn, shoulder wide and.
But they had to be motorcycle, car.
It does, I believe, I'll check, I've got the permit right here, it does specify motorcycles.
It does, okay. I wasn't really sure.
And I'll confirm that, I've got the
Because
permit right here.
I know from my time on the department, there were a number of motor vehicle, car versus car,
Mhm.
and a couple of car versus people.
I'm also concerned about car versus RV. And that's the slowest moving.
Yeah.
Besides when you guys have rallies, that's the slowest moving
Oh, yeah.
vehicle that you've got there, and people are coming down the hill there from the south, and it's.
Yep.
But we'll have all the data on.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you had received anything.
Another question on that, when does the three-year period begin? Is it when all the phases are completely built?
No, they're looking at it now, they're gonna go back for the past couple of years and say, how many accidents occurred in this
Correct.
particular year?
We're doing a look back.
Right, so if they go back and they look for 3 years, they're gonna look at it and say, in 2013, how many accidents occurred? In 2014, how many accidents occurred? And if any one of
I
those
thought
years
it
has
was going
3,
forward.
no,
Well,
it's retroactive.
Some of the reasons for why that language is there is the DEP permit was a phased permit. So obviously they knew as it grew, as more and more users came, it was changing dynamics, so that would.
What's puzzling to me is I thought there were traffic studies, some type of standards where the amount of traffic would indicate how many turns were, how many potential accidents, instead of just saying, well, we'll wait. Haven't they already done it?
Well,
You think it's supposed to make sense?
Well, it's trip generation.
Yeah,
It's
trip
trip
generation.
generation.
paraphrasing the permit, essentially, the study was done by Bill Eaton, the analysis was done by Bill Eaton. He did the counts, the trip generation, actual counts. We did actual counts. Normally you would use ITE numbers, or sort of theoretical numbers. We did actual counts to use the model and project forward to the maximum capacity of the saloon expanded. And remember, we talked about this last meeting, our campground in totality, when it's all said and done, all the current campground, the 15 sites that were permitted and the new 140, will end up with around 190. His model included 270, permit says 280, but 270. So on top of the full build-out of the saloon, and so already the capacity, one could say, well, geez, we should go back and look at and reduce those numbers. We're not looking to do that. We're taking the permit for what it is. So if, in the criteria, they did not find that there were any capacity issues at the next intersections, because those are signalized intersections. And there were no capacity issues there or Limerick Road, and so the criteria was more of a safety criteria, and that's what they established was based on accidents. But you're right, some permits are written that way, based on simply left turning volume. There's a left turning, a warrant for a turn lane, they call it a warrant, you've probably heard this conversation before from a traffic engineer, is based on very specific criteria, basically how much opposing traffic, how large are the gaps, and what's the volume of forward traffic. And essentially that determines whether or not you do the left turn lane. In this case, the issue wasn't that of the opposing traffic, it was the issue of the number of motorcycles, because you can slip, they can slip a lot of motorcycles in a lot quicker time than you can with cars. So they determined that criteria sort of, I gather, unique to this establishment. And we did do, one of the requirements was to look at, and we did video cams of the large events. So they have documentation of what, in terms of queuing, because one of the criteria was if there was queuing of X number of feet or substantial queuing, people waiting to take a left turn on Route 1, that would also trigger as part of the criteria. So they did have videos, and those have all been submitted to DOT.
Seems to me that there was another study that was done in Arundel, about a mile north, with about the same amount of use, and it was required to have a turning lane. So it just, and this seems to have even more, to me, when you add up the 190 units plus the tavern.
One would think, I'm not a DOT engineer, one would think, but it would be, one would think, but it's a good comparison. And some of the specifics are, that was done in a 50-mile-an-hour zone, which is.
No, it's not 50.
Even though it's been reduced to 40.
No, down, farther down, there's a left-hand turn lane on the market.
Oh, no, he's going the other way.
That's been reduced. But the study was done when it was still a 50-mile-an-hour lane. And so that the criteria are different in terms of your gaps and the ability to make a left turn versus a slower. And that was anticipating the trigger. I don't want to get into that project. We'll cover it later. The trigger there was a different trigger, basically commercial use.
Okay.
So you got your figures not wet too, so I mean,
Okay. Is there anything else that you guys have for Rick?
thank you for considering my fire hydrant.
Thank you.
And you can put Marty's name on it if you want.
So we're thinking what, maybe a month?
Our anticipated, I think we'd like to submit in around 2 weeks if we can get our homework done, and then be on the meeting, not, meeting 2 meetings tomorrow.
You should know that I've told the town planner that we have a 14-day submission deadline, and we're sticking to it. It's 14, don't come in on day 13 and think you'll make the
So
meeting.
it's not 10 anymore, it's 14.
It's always been 14.
It's always
I'm giving
been
you guys a break.
10 in the book says 10.
Oh, for subdivision?
We'll give you 14. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you can be leaving at 10, see, a month and a half.
Okay, new application, Cape Arundel Cottage Resort, revision of an approved subdivision and conditional use permit, sketch plan application. The application to replace approved maintenance area with 4 additional cottage units in a 259 seasonal cottage resort on 294.3 acres located at 1976 Portland Road, tax map 11, lot 9, and map 12, lots 6, 7, 9, and 13 located at 1976 Portland Road in the BI district and the RP district. Kennebunkport Cottage Resort LLC is the owner, and Joe Paolini is the applicant.
Just can't get your name right.
I'm thinking that will be a busy time.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Rick Wright, Light Environmental Design, and Joe Paolini is here, and our marketing director Kim is here as well to answer questions. Our application is the sketch plan is relatively simple. Hopefully, we think it's simple. Hopefully, the board will agree. And essentially, what we're looking to do, or we're asking the board for 2 things, modifications. One is, just in terms of where we're at with the project, this is again phase 1A, we call it, phase 1B, the community center. phase, we're calling this green phase, phase 2. At this point in time, there's the sales unit here, 3 model units, and all of it called Adams Lane. That has all been completed, other than spring landscaping. It's all been completed in phase 1. We're working now on phase 1B, which is units 12 through 31, correct? And we took 1 unit out, so 12 to 31 minus 1 that we wanted to make more space for. That is, currently there are 7 units being framed now, 8 being framed, several foundations, and so that's moving right along, and will be worked through the winter. And phase 2, no construction has started, but the blasting is near complete. They've been blasting for quite a bit of time, and that will be crushed over the winter and cleared to start preparing the infrastructure for utilities and whatnot. And we'll be completing the rest of the underground utilities in the next month and a half. And the community center is framing started this week, yesterday, on the community center. So things are moving right along. The wastewater system for the first phases, the first 2-phase portions of the leach fields, the tankage, the utility building that goes with it is being framed now, and that's underway, and they're backfilling. The leach fields are all installed. We're putting in some final valving today. So that should all be operational come this spring. And we have 1 pump station up front, which should be installed the guts of it any day, and a pump station at the wastewater system which will be installed as well, the rest of it. So things are moving along very quickly, and we've done, it's coming along very nicely, so if we get a chance to take a look, I can encourage it.
It's
Power.
It's interesting driving down, like heading north on Route 1, you don't see it, because you go by it and it's coming south. It's really impressive to come up over the hill and around the corner, and there it is. They look really nice.
Thank you. They've done a wonderful job of that. And Kim is the one, we can thank for all the sales, and we should get her to bed. We should get her to bed tonight because she needs her energy marketing. It's a tough time of year to be marketing. So what we're here tonight for, 2 things. You recall there is, we had proposed a manager's residence and maintenance area just beyond phase 1A. And I'm going to go to a larger scale here in a second so you don't have to stretch your eyes. And this is a blow up of that area. I'm going to put this plan over. This is what's been approved, a blow up of phase 1A here, the main access road, the commercial lot. It's a concept we had, was a manager's house, a driveway that comes in, a couple of maintenance sheds for equipment, etc. And this is actually a under-drain soil filter, stormwater facility surrounded by woods. And this has all been constructed. What we'd like to do, when we open that up right now, it's being used as a contractor yard, and it became pretty apparent, and Joe brought this up one day, I think a light bulb went off, and he was thinking. It's a really wonderful area. It's very close, but yet sort of separated from all the activities going on here. You've got a pond, there's another wet pond over here. We're building a walking trail along that buffer. Right now we're starting the walking trail. This would really make an ideal spot for additional units as opposed to putting a maintenance area right behind units which are right here with a thin wooded buffer. It just makes so much more sense. And so the idea that we're coming to the board to ask for an amendment to allow the change from a maintenance area to add 4 more units to our density, which would take us from 259 permitted to 263. And there's, again, a unit here that we may not build, but that would be the total. And then in the meantime, we have plenty of other areas to put a maintenance facility or a temporary facility. At this point, it's not even determined that the manager would live on premises at this time. And then eventually, what could happen is a sales unit, as the phases are sold out, the sales unit, as you drive in, could be turned into a manager's residence right here. So that's number 1. So we're here with a sketch plan.
What's the advantage to the manager's unit right there?
To having it here?
Yeah.
If it would just make sense to have someone who's close. Once the sales moved on and you don't need the unit anymore, it could be made into a unit here. You're right in the middle of activities here. You can see what's going on, and et cetera.
And it's outside of the security
On the
area.
other side of the gate.
Yeah, outside.
Before you move on,
Yeah.
I'm a little confused because you note caretaker's residence in here,
Mhm.
but then you're talking about units, and is it just one of the units? Because you have, you know, those 4 units that you're looking off of Adams Lane.
Yeah.
But then on the other map, and you've mentioned a couple times, you're talking about caretaker's residence.
Okay, I apologize. This, when I say maintenance area, which is, this is that same area, this, conceptually, this would have been the caretaker's house, just a concept, and then these would have been, maintenance facilities, garages and whatnot.
Oh, would have been.
Would
what
have
you're
been, yes.
proposing. Okay.
So we're taking this entire area, now fast forward to a blow up of that area in the same almost the same orientation, sort of, I flip this over, I guess. Here's the road coming in, 4 units, the house would have been here, and the 2 barns would have been here. So that's our request is on the sketch plan level to get a nod forward of the board, if the board's in agreement, in which case we would come back with fully engineered plans and a request for a formal modification or amendment to the approvals. And it would also require a DEP, a minor amendment from the DEP as well.
Are those units more secure? Not secured, but kind of,
Private?
yeah, kind of have their own little cubby hole there.
Kind of,
I
yes,
mean,
yes.
you know,
Secluded.
elite.
Elite,
Elite.
It is, it's a really, if you drive out there, you realize that, as a contractor you are now, you sort of have to sort of be visual and think about it. It's just, it's a nice, it's got a nice feel to it, and it's, again, we've got a very thin wooded band here. This is graphically almost correct. We've got units here, there's a thin wetland line, the water drains down towards Princess Pond and then the wetlands down here. It makes a nice buffer, but it's not a real thick buffer. So one of the things too is that having a maintenance area right behind these units, there'll be noise going on, there'll be grinding, and thinking, but, when you see the units on the ground, it didn't seem to be the best fit, and when you put units there, it's a nice little spot and it fit nicely. And the stormwater pond would still be built, and we'd have to go through stormwater calcs. This would actually probably be a reduction in stormwater impervious area, so we don't see a problem there. We'd still be building that same filter. I don't think we'd even change it. No need to.
Rick, I wasn't a part of the original review, so I'm not real greatly familiar with the overall, project. Where would, you mentioned that the maintenance units would be easily relocated. What's your initial thoughts, or even, just what you've got in mind now and timing on that?
We don't actually have a spot per se, Joe, you might want to speak to this, Joe, but
we don't, and we may not need it. I mean, we're using subcontractors, so we may not need that, those garages. Okay, we have a community center that gets closed down, so a lot of that furniture in the wintertime will be put into the community center. For example, lounge chairs and umbrellas and things like that. In terms of maintaining the site in the winter, we'll probably do it, with subcontractors. It doesn't have to be with employees.
Sure.
Right now, that's what we're doing anyway. We do have a few employees that I just brought on, but those folks basically are doing things like this new walking trail, internal walking trail we're talking about. Well, building that out instead of hiring subcontractors. Then doing our own landscaping, for example, landscaping in front of the units as we build them. That's stuff that we can handle. We don't have to go outside all the time. So in terms of where we could put it, if there is a need for it, and it's decided that we need some storage, closed-in storage, we've got also that 92 acres that is right there that we're bringing on. And God knows there's plenty of land there. And that would be a nice place to put it, too, out of the way, so that if in the morning, for example, the guys get going at 7 o'clock and people want to sleep, you don't get that central location where you're getting all this noise of the motors, the engines.
You don't get the
No, I mean, based on what you're saying, I think relocating that sounds like a very, very wise idea. Just was curious, if you had the premise for a need for it initially, what sort of changed in the mindset to think that either you don't or,
We may still need it because it's 75% occupied, sold, I should say. We have to turn it over to the condo association. At that time, those people could say, we would like to have a storage facility somewhere. And then we do have plenty of opportunities and areas to put it at.
Right, one area we thought about conceptually, we have the current leach fields here, and there's a large parcel, there's this open space down here, which would be leach fields slash ball fields in the future, formal. Right now, we've just created a really nice frisbee field, but it's not a formal ball field on top of the septic. In the future, these are actually, the grade here will work out, we've got this design as a recreation field and a ball field. That would be, and it was a small drive, that would be a nice area to put a potential maintenance facility as well, but leaving our options open. It just, like I said, when you walk out, you look at this area, look at its proximity, it's almost a no-brainer that these would really be nice sites.
Okay, question for that. These 4 units here, are they, will they be more visible or whatever to property line and a butter?
They will be no more visible, they'll be less visible, I would think, than what we proposed, because if those would have been, larger buildings, like a shed. These would fit in well, and there's no visibility. The closest property line is
Fritz.
Dick Fritz's property, and keep flipping it over the boards here. Sense of scale here. And this is a 100 scale, it's gonna be 40 scale plan. This is our 100-foot buffer. Property line is here.
Yeah.
This is Fritz's property. His pond is about down here. And this is the 100-foot buffer right here, 40 scale. That's 100 feet. And this is completely wooded. And you can't, and this is all wooded for probably 200 feet on Fritz's side. So you've got a football field of very thick woods.
But in terms of location, if you locate the 2 end buildings, Rick, the 2 garages, those units are gonna be at the same location, those 2 end units.
And they'll be small.
And they'll be smaller. And then, yeah, so.
Anything else from the board?
The only question I have is septic calculations with more units, 4 more units, is that?
We'll provide that, and honestly, through the chair, it won't make a dent. It's roughly a 40,000 gallon system. 4 units being replaced by what was the maintenance area. We assumed certain calculations for the maintenance area. Each of the units we used was, I think, 120 gallons a day. It's a 2-bedroom. Again, normally you'd have 2 times 90, which is 180 by state plumbing code. Again, we designed the system based on empirical data we got from other systems, working with the state DHS, and came up with a number, because these aren't your day-to-day residences, and they were getting peaks of much less than that from the facilities up in Wells, but we went with 120. So the system is already conservatively designed, number one. Number two, our amendment to the town, to the DEP, will accommodate those flows. And the force mains, by the way, has already been installed. We anticipated a force main from this area up to the system, because it's a little bit lower in the road, and the force main's already been installed to here anyway, so.
Is there anything from the town planner?
To the chair.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. Rick, I'm a little concerned about the geometry here at the terminus. Two questions. Number one, how does a lost person turn around? And second of all, how does my fire engine get out?
Fire engine would probably back out.
Yeah, I don't like that. That's a tough one. Somebody's gonna have to do a 3-point turn there. In your other locations, you made it a lot easier to get out of situations. So, yeah, if you look at the geometry of that.
Okay, we can take a look at it right now.
The second thing is that, big question that I have, that with the loss of the storage areas, where are you gonna put all your golf carts?
The golf carts don't go in the storage area.
Where
They
do they go?
basically stay near the units and they get covered if they want to.
Where is
The golf carts weren't made to go into the garages.
So we're gonna have exterior golf carts that are gonna be out there all winter long?
Some people do leave them out there, some people send them out to storage areas. It's up to them.
So that's not something you're gonna provide on site?
No, those are electric motor, they're not engines.
Like a charging station, maybe down, do we have a utility shed?
Yeah.
But we'll probably put a charging station there, or have an intermediate charging station at the
Parking.
community center. The community center's all,
Also at the front entrance, right at the, visitors parking charge.
they thought of putting chargers at those. these main parking lots have been constructed. This is the grass overflow lot, it's also been constructed.
Yeah.
And we put, our electrician, we've had the outlets from the light poles, put outlets in so they can put chargers on there for golf carts to charge as well.
There will have charging stations around the area.
Yeah, and I'm not worried about that, I'm just thinking that there's gonna be some pressure from residents at some point, that their golf cart's gonna get beat the heck over the winter.
They've been doing this, they cover them. They have tarps and they cover them, they especially make tarps for them.
There's also a company in Goffstown, New Hampshire that comes down and does a lot of them in wells. And it's $275. They come, pick up your golf cart, clean it over the winter and bring it back in the spring.
There's one up in Waterboro that does the same thing.
Cool.
Oh, Waterboro, Maine?
Yeah,
Oh,
ABL Golf Carts does the same thing.
that's even better.
Now, do
If you
each
go there, tell them I said.
unit that has possibly a golf cart, do they have a outside port so they can plug it in and make their each unit, each golf cart happy? I mean, I
We have
just,
outside receptacles.
Outside receptacles, yeah.
yeah, but I'm just saying is, I don't know what kind of charging station you need. I mean, is it like you just turn on and take the extension cord and you plug it in and automatically?
8-volt charger.
Yep, just to a GFI, an external GFI outlet. And that's
So
what he needs.
actually, each unit can charge their own if they want,
Yeah.
instead of turning and having a big cluster of, okay, everybody run down, we gotta go charge our golf cart.
Okay, so before I ask my question, does anybody from the public have any questions about this? Okay. My question, and correct, I am hoping that I did not hear you correctly, but when you talked about moving the caretaker's facility away from this location, you sounded as if you were questioning whether or not you would have a caretaker out there on a year-round basis?
We can have them, but he can be 10 minutes away, he doesn't have to live there. We have people that have applied for work, they wanna do it, they live within 10 minutes or so, they're on a 24-hour, 7 days a week call.
Well, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Was that not part of the original approval application, was that there would be somebody on site 24/7 in the off-season?
I'll have to look at that.
Yeah.
The ordinance,
I think-
maybe we'll check, the ordinance makes it optional, but maybe the approval.
I think
I
the
think
approval
we
is
said
mandated, and that's why I'm
that
asking.
there would be somebody there year-round. I mean, for your,
There's somebody on call 24/7.
no, but I'm just kind of
We
remembering,
can
yeah.
amend that as part of our
Yeah,
application.
but in terms of.
For security or whatever, I mean, that's
It would be
fine.
horrible to get all the way through this and get everything all done and find out that, well, you're supposed to have somebody there and you don't.
No, but we do have the opportunity to take the sales office and model.
And
that is perfect, building for a caretaker eventually.
Yeah, you had mentioned that at one point.
Yeah.
Rick had mentioned the fact that you weren't sure about the caretaker, and my recollection is that it was a condition of approval.
If it is a condition of approval, then so be it,
You
but we
can
can
either
also
ask
address it
to have
later.
it removed or
To relax that.
put something in.
Yeah,
That was my whole issue.
No, good point. Yeah, I think you may be right. I've got the documents here, but we'll check that. The ordinance is permissive in terms of saying
Yeah.
that, but you're right, the permit may be more restrictive. We'll take a look at that, put that in our application. if you want.
Well, getting back to the change request.
Yes.
I would like to support that request, and unless the board has more discussion, I will make a motion to that effect.
Well, do we need one? We don't have anything in front of us.
Coming back.
They're gonna come back with an
Yeah, but
application.
don't they want to know that the board will approve this change, and then they come back with a detail? I thought that was
Yeah,
all.
but I'm not sure we need to formalize that with a vote.
Okay.
It's just more of
A
a,
sense of the board,
a
then?
sense of the board kind of situation.
I'm not hearing any.
I don't,
Negative.
yeah, I don't hear a lot of disagreement with the idea.
This is not preliminary, pre-approved.
Yeah, I don't wanna run out of findings of fact on the fly.
Thank you. The second thing that is on our request, this is a little different. In the original application, you recall, we had talked about having a sidewalk up from Route 1 all the way to the community center. And we had requested earlier to remove this section because we realized that people, looking at the site, talking to Kim from her experience in Wells, that people really weren't going to be walking down to Route 1 because there's nowhere to walk to. What we've done instead is where we've talked about, we're developing this, right now it's being constructed by hand, a walking trail, a really nice walking trail that it follows the grass parking lot, just informally. We'll follow between, we've got a berm between the lower pond and this is a detention pond. And we'll follow the edge of the woods, and we've actually flagged it, it's going to go along the buffer and connect back up down by the community center. And that's what people, will encourage people to use that. We do have sidewalks all constructed around the sales office. But what our request is that, and this comes from, you know, Kim has a lot of experience with these facilities, and you sort of learn as you go. That once we're in the facility, and you go from our cover letter, I don't want to repeat what I put in there, but essentially, we're looking at this as a non-vehicle centric type of a living environment. Active living, bicycles, golf carts, walking, cycles, the Eastern Trail, and that people generally will just walk in the roads, and it keeps traffic going slow because the idea is there's not a lot of traffic, I mean people coming for the weekends, but during the day, other than people coming and going, using vans maybe to go to the beach as a group facility, people will use the roads, and so we're requesting, if the board agrees, to waive the need to construct this sidewalk from Adams Lane, which is on the left-hand side. It was going to follow the roadway, and then in front of the community center ended just beyond the community center. Community center, remember, has been approved with sidewalks internally. That of course we have. But along the roadway, what we'd rather do is leave the grass shoulder. We have a big utility bank there. Leave the grass shoulder and just have people walk on the shoulder and in the road. And I think that's pretty much the way people, they just use the roads to walk. So we're requesting the board waive the need to put that walkway in.
How wide is the road construction?
This road is 20, the main road I think is 22 feet?
Yes.
22.
The one that goes, Founders and then goes into Patriot, yeah, all the way out for emergency, versus 22 feet.
Okay, your orange right there, what was the proposed width of the sidewalk?
5 feet with an esplanade, grassed esplanade between the road and the sidewalk.
Why I'm asking that is, if you're gonna have golf carts running up and down that, okay?
On the roadway.
No, in your sidewalk, because you just said bicycle and everything else in your golf carts.
He was talking
Golf
about
carts
in the road.
in general, I mean, in general, through the chair, Mary, the golf carts, what we're saying is that in general, people use the streets. Golf carts would always use the streets, they're not allowed on the sidewalk. Yeah. So they would always be in the
Because
streets.
that's where I was thinking, because you would be beating your sidewalk, which would normally, if it's green, you're gonna turn on and kill your turf or anything else, and you're just gonna have dead grass.
Correct.
So, I mean,
If golf carts would only be in the roadways with or without a sidewalk, right? Just, people who would normally walk on the sidewalks would now be walking the street, or they could walk on the grass shoulder. Bicycles would normally be in the roadway, unless you've got, a parent with a small kid. Bicycles normally don't ride on sidewalks, nor should they be, unless it's, again, families and that sort of thing. So really, it's just taking the pedestrians and putting them into the street, mixing them with cars, which is part of the whole idea of green streets and complete street policies, of trying to mix traffic in these sort of environments where it's not a typical residential subdivision. It operates differently, it breathes differently, and the concept is more of a resort or more like, if you use the term, a campground, kind of a living, or campgrounds. You wouldn't expect a sidewalk in a campground. You've got RVs, you've got people coming and going during the day with trailers and people walking to the wherever, and it works. And it's the same kind of a concept here of sort of living and using that facility. So, we're looking for the board's guidance, we're asking for a waiver of that or to have that removed from our requirements.
Are you proposing to eliminate sidewalks throughout or only this section?
This was the only section we had proposed sidewalks. Beyond here, we're going to be using the streets anyway. And then trails, we're having an entire network of trail systems.
what was your sidewalk gonna be constructed of?
Bituminous.
Okay, with the amount of property that you have created, meaning your crushed stone and this, that, and everything else, could or would it be feasible to use your sidewalk as a crushed stone? So that it would have drainage and everything else through it?
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
I'd rather have grass and repair the grass. In other words, that space is gonna be green and people can walk on it,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
And it just makes it that much better looking than black hot top or gravel.
That's why I was just,
No,
Yeah. So, I'm all in favor, but I'm curious about going down the hill towards Route 1. After, then they're not really in the park with the electric golf carts. There could be more vehicles going through